Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
That was Donald Trump at his last press conference on July 27th. When he meets the press this week, it will have been 167 days, and we're pretty sure Russia will be listening this time as well. What does he need to say? Let's talk to our panel. Rick Santorum, former presidential candidate and senator from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Nina Turner, former Ohio state senator. Neera Tanden, president of the Center for American Progress, and CNN political commentator Alice Stewart. Senator, you are a hawk on the subject of Russia. What do you, as a supporter of the president-elect and also somebody who views Vladimir Putin with clear eyes, what do you want him to say when the subject comes up at the press conference?
I think what he will say is what President Bush said, what President Obama said, which is that, you know, he's going to, on the subject of Russia, try to chart a new path and reset the relationship. And that he's tweeted many times that he's going to have a better relationship with Russia. President Obama said that. President Bush said that. And I think President Trump's going to try that. President Obama failed. President Bush failed. Just about every other president has failed, maybe with the exception of Ronald Reagan, but that resulted in the collapse of the Soviet Union. So I'm not particularly optimistic, but I don't think it's necessarily a earth-shattering event that one of our major foes that has certainly been a problem for our country, that we have a new president who thinks he can do it better and he can engage Russia in a way that's more constructive.
Neera, as a victim of the Russian hackers whose emails were released through WikiLeaks, what do you want to hear from President-elect Trump?
I want him to state clearly what the intelligence agencies have now said to him to his face, which is that Russia hacked this election in order to get him elected, help him win. I don't understand why he cannot simply acknowledge that fact. He had his intelligence briefings. He's still misstating facts. He said they only went after Democrats. They never went after the Republicans. They did go after the Republicans. They haven't released that information. And so I have to say, I just do not understand why he will not basically state these facts. And the fact that he won't makes me worried. And that's why I think it's a little ridiculous that we haven't had a single investigation out of the House. They had 33 investigations in the House on Benghazi. This is an issue in which all of our intelligence agencies are saying this is a clear threat, not just for now, but for the future. And I don't understand why the president-elect, why Trump will not say, I'm going to take action on this, and why Speaker Ryan won't hold a single hearing on it.
The point is, we've known about Russian hacking and Chinese hacking of institutions in this country for years. It is nothing new. We've seen this before. Why all of a sudden now, during an election year,
they tried to get Donald Trump elected. That's why it's a big deal. When the Russians come into the United States, steal data, and it's not only that, the intelligence agencies talked about fake news. It's a whole array of forces to undermine our democracy. I just can't understand why people who have been claiming to be patriots and putting our country first won't take action. Why won't Speaker Ryan take action on this?
And the frustration with Trump and the Trump campaign is the Democrats' efforts to undermine his victory. He won this election fair and square through the electoral process. Now by focusing on the Russian hacking with regard to, yes, we do know that based on the evidence presented at the hearings, that Putin did dictate influencing and hacking into the American institutions to influence the election. But there has been zero evidence to prove whatsoever, without a shadow of a doubt, that it impacted the outcome of the election.
That's because the intelligence agencies, please read the report, the intelligence agencies have said they can't determine that, but obviously the fact that Donald Trump used it 164 times in the month of October shows you that there must have been some.
I want to bring you in. You know, what do you make of all this?
I think the president-elect should say that Russia's meddling made a divisive election cycle even that much more divisive, and that as the American president, he will not tolerate that in any form or fashion from any nation. Now, the election was free and fair. You know, I do not believe that meddling, as bad as it was, influenced the outcome. President-elect Trump won the Electoral College, and he will be sworn in as president. But that being said, as Americans, all of us, no matter what side we're on, should be very clear that no other nation has a right to meddle in our elections and that it won't be tolerated. And we as Americans have to make sure that something like this never, ever happens again. Now, I'm not going to hold my breath, But President-elect Trump should make it very clear that he is America's president.
Senator, what else do you want to hear from President-elect Trump when he speaks to reporters?
Well, I mean, on Russia, on
anything.
Well, look, I think the most important thing he needs to focus on is delivering on the agenda that he set, and that is, number one, repealing Obamacare. And I know there's a big fight about repeal and replace, but we have to repeal Obamacare.
So you don't think it needs to be replaced immediately?
I think it should be, the process should be started to replace. And there's a lot of discussion going on right now in the House and Senate as to how to do that. I'm frankly shocked that they don't have a plan, that they haven't really prepared for this. I know it's not going to be an easy thing to do, but they should have put a little bit more work into it than now here in the interim trying to figure out a plan forward. It was always going to be difficult because the vast majority of people who got onto Obamacare, the millions of people who were at it, were not on Obamacare, they're on Medicaid.
Right.
So there's a huge expansion of Medicaid that's occurred. So how are you going to unwind that and transition people into the private sector? I know there has been thinking about it, but no one, to at least my knowledge to date, has a real clear plan on how to do that, and that's a big problem.